Jace, what are you doing?
Just moved the check today forward because we're going to be sailing off the wind today and it will get in the way otherwise. One of the challenges coming off the off season is making sure that all of the rigging was done properly, specifically the reef lines. They're a bit tricky since you're doing them well in the stack pack. But miracle by miracle, the 3 clue ones work perfectly, but only one of the 3 tack ones, which are the easy ones, were done correctly. A quick walk forward and that will be remedied. And there goes the town of Plymouth. Wonderful host. River Yelm almost achieved, passing the town of Wembury. As we admired the beautiful farmland on the coast, we powered under full main and staysail. The reason for the staysail was to take a little sting out of the cold, high teens breeze. The breeze topped 20 and the boat felt very comfortable with very little heel. Later in the day I critiqued the sail shape and then eased the sheet. Today has been a low filming day, but let's go check in with Gail and maybe she'll give us a summary of today's events. Gail?
We went to the fuel dock, we fueled up, started filling our second tank, which we hadn't used before, and now we're headed to the River Yelm.
I did a poor job of documenting the short trip over here, but look where we ended up. I mean, this is fantastic. Called the River Yelm. Locals pronounce it River Yam. There was a large exodus of boats from the River Yelm today as they headed out as part of a rally headed west. When I arrived in the river, I asked this boat in center view whether I was grabbing the visitor mooring, and they kindly gave me good guidance. Obviously, at a mooring ball, one does not have shore power, so out came my flying solar panel, which added a bit of boost to the batteries. Time to open up the hatch and inflate the dinghy so we get shore access. Oh, I had to do all the other things like put the mainsail away, put the cover on, flake a bunch of lines. Today we were boarded by the Border Patrol, who are stationed on a ship offshore and bring their rib in to check the harbor for foreign boats. Obviously we looked quite suspicious, and they boarded us, very professional, but did demand our papers and an investigation of the boat. I tried to be as polite and efficient as possible. One of the new gizmos that we brought over from the US for this season is an electric pump. The pump is surprisingly loud, so I probably don't make friends with the anchorage. Secondly, when the pump reaches higher pressures, that loud noise doubles or triples. The pump will shut off at a certain bars of pressure, but I'm not sure what that should be for my dinghy. See my slightly hobo solution where the wire goes into the boat to grab power. The pump has a cigarette lighter connector, which I really do despise, and then that goes to a transformer, which then I plug into a traditional outlet. If you were in a nearby boat and heard me doing the inflation, would it bother you? We are trying to see over our 5 days at anchor or more how the batteries will survive. We're right now at minus 1.8 of usage and our solar is doing a mere 3 amps. Here's the Garmin Cortex VHF, and what it's doing right now, it's telling us how great we are anchored. It's doing an anchor watch. All those dots are where we were previously. So we've stayed on our mooring ball in the same location. Recommendation to Garmin, add a mooring ball feature. And the breeze has died down, which is really nice. It's a mere 8 knots. And going to shore in the now inflated dinghy. This is the picturesque town of Yelm as we approach by dinghy. Gail likes to be up front. I don't know if that's the Yelm Hotel or what. I just made that up. But we'll see. Oh, I gotta steer. Gail, can you give us a little summary on your review of my motoring skills?
So far, so good.
Really? Often critical of my dinghy operations. Yelm is a picturesque town full of seaside cottages. But I wonder in 10 years, will it be 100% octogenarians? We've reached the end of the navigable portion of the River Yelm. My electric outboard does not give me any range anxiety, as it has a really clever display on the back that tells you how much more time it can run. As you reduce the throttle, the range increases.
Much nicer downwind.
Oh, just the whole boat is warmed up from the dew. And we have an hour and change left on the batteries at this speed. Enjoying a quiet dinghy ride under electric motor. You want to buy a house here, Gail?
No, thank you. There's the dinghy dock.
Oh, okay. If I just totally screwed the pooch.
Yep.
I'm going over to check it out. I think the other is for the ferry. The empty, big empty space.
Yeah.
We are now safely parked at the dinghy dock, and boy, there are a few dinghies at this dinghy dock.
Here, this would be everybody who's on mooring boat.
I initially tied up the dinghy's painter using a bowl and a bight to make it easier for other dinghies to depart that had attached to the cleat. I was overflowing with enthusiasm to explore this picturesque seaside town. Britain really sure offers it up. Cyclops, center of frame, with two fenders hanging out on the side, which indicates we are expecting, if there's a raft up, for them to come on our port side. The guy carrying the large, heavy box darted out of frame. So kind. Big scandal right now in the UK about the post office. Specifically, they had accounting problems and blamed it on the employees, but it was their software. Is what the locals call a VOSS, a VOSS. And is a path which you can only use near low tide. So we are going across one VOSS, and then we're planning on going a second VOSS that's sort of just down the dried out riverbed. Well, we'll see. If we do not walk briskly, we will not get back. I never tire with my amusement of seeing large bodies of water disappear with the tide. This looks like a nice real estate setup, though I do wonder what it's like having your boat only accessible in certain tides. Our second VOSS to cross is coming up now, and the reward is your chance to go visit the Ship Inn. This lovely house has a thatched roof. As I prepare for a voyage to a town called Foy, which also will be a river. Tomorrow's weather forecast includes puffs up to 35 knots, so we'll be tucked in safely, which is why we're leaving here a day early. But we'll watch out for a pair of boats that are on the buoy behind us. Here's what I call the horse blanket. It covers the front portion of the mainsail, pretty common on sailboats. And then I have to unzipper the stack pack, which right now is looking a little asymmetric. The water taxi will come pick up Gail. She's skipping this trip. Gail departing for the bus. Kind of lonely now. Just me on board. So this is my solo departure from the mooring ball. Not a super difficult maneuver. Just making sure I don't end up visiting the neighbor that's directly behind me. The current is pushing from the bow to the stern. So I'm just giving a little bit of forward throttle, and then I'll rush up and untie. There we go. Now I'm heading up to the bow to untie the connection to the mooring ball. You know that rule, when you rush it goes slower. And so I was rushing to try to untie, but it took a while. Then I got caught in the sheets. Boy, what a clown car of an effort. But I'm off. Oh, now I'm scurrying back from the bow, and you can see the bow is falling off faster than the stern. And that's because the current's coming in and the bow is lighter. This is typical of all sailboats. Now I'm back at the helm. I can use a combination of the throttle and the thruster to try to get a nice safe departure. I've got the boat in reverse, turning on the thruster, and removing the tiller from the lifelines. Both jobs I should have done before. Now you can see I'm cheating here a bit. I'm using my bow thruster to raise the bow to its original position. Now I try not to have a plan that counts on the thruster, so if I had not had such an easy time with the thruster, I would have continued to back out perpendicular to the other boats. But the thruster seems to be working quite well and fighting the current, and I'm about 30 degrees off from where I want to be. And then I'll put the engine in forward and head out the river. I'm always concerned that I'll leave the bow thruster down. The boat, if going more than 3 knots, might damage the bow thruster mechanics if the bow thruster is descended. So here I'm always double, triple checking that the bow thruster is down by seeing if the light is red. It's hard to see in the bright light. The river Yelm has a couple of shallow spots, which have caught yachtsmen out in the past, so I need to be on my A game as I navigate out. In rivers, I tend to prefer to steer the boat by using the knob on the chart plotter. This way I get to be nice and close to the chart plotter to understand the risks ahead. One warning for you if you're new to a B&G equipment: if you use the zoom button for zooming in and out on a chart, while the autopilot panel is selected, it will not zoom in the chart, but rather turn the boat violently one direction or another. Oh yeah, I've made that mistake about 20 times. The reason I'm craning my neck and looking behind the boat is I'm trying to make sure I'm lined up with the range markers. The range markers help a bunch when coming into the River Yelm, but unfortunately, they're facing only the entrance direction, so you have to look over your shoulder when you're leaving. That's the leading mark to teach you how to get in or out through safe waters. There's no channel marks to get you there. There are leading marks. Oh. Well, I still have the capacity to do dumb stuff. Look at that red channel marker that I'm leaving on the wrong side. I thought it was actually a mooring ball. Fortunately, I was leaving close to high water, and I was close to the deep water anyway. Guess it's better to be lucky than smart. I am kind of disappointed I make such a bonehead mistake. I blame it on being a solo sailor, or taking too many videos for YouTube. No harm done, and I passed the next mark on the correct side. But you see my point, it's totally different shape than the first one. Time to unfrap the main halyard. Frapping's just a fancy term for putting the main halyard in a position that doesn't cause it to bash the mast when you're at anchor. I loop a sail tie around the main halyard and the stack pack, which prevents making that annoying thwack 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 noise in a marina. Fully crewed yachts have the luxury of having a crew stand at the mast and, quote, jump the halyard. I must do it from the cockpit with the winch. Friends have often asked me, why didn't you go for at least the electric winch for the halyard? And I just enjoy the exercise. Halfway through a mainsail hoist, I start to have second thoughts about my decision that exercise is good. No matter where I left the reefs, I make sure all the clutches are open before hoisting the mainsail, as well as the vang. Once the main is about a third of the way up, I must switch from using hand power to using the power of the winch. One thing I like about a properly set up sailboat is there's plenty of space to grind the winch. On some sailboats, they've added biminis and enclosures. When you try to operate the winch, your knuckles bash against some stainless steel part. The hazard I was dealing with is that my tether wants to jump in and get involved in the winch grinding. Eventually the load becomes too much and I change directions to get more mechanical advantage from the winch. As I tighten the main halyard to make sure there are no creases in the luff, I hear a little creaking noise. I wonder if that's because I haven't eased the main sheet enough. With the mainsail hoisted, it's now time to unfurl the Genoa. I'm grinding the winch, which is pulling on the Genoa sheet, while with my left hand I'm easing the Genoa furling line. Just having enough pressure that the Genoa furling line doesn't jump out. I've spoken about it before, but my sheet winches are 3-speed. The third speed is fantastic for taking the Genoa in, but also dangerous like an electric winch. You have to keep looking at the sail to make sure it's not hooked, else something will break. The winch won't stop. When deploying the Genoa with the intention to be on a bead, it's a good idea to try to keep the Genoa trimmed inside the lifelines. I failed to do that, and what happens is as you trim the Genoa inside the lifelines later, it needs to be skirted, which just means the Genoa needs to be brought over the lifelines. Unfortunately, today I had to go forward to fix that problem. Banging on the lifelines was not sufficient. About 25 miles to go to Foy. Now that is good news. Look at the background behind me. Come on. Not a bad place to be sailing. Now, it could be said that it could be warmer. We are caught in a little bit of a light spot. And what's the light spot caused by? Well, it's caused by a ship. There's the ship I was talking about. She is traveling along at 0.2 of a knot, so effectively she's anchored and waiting to come into maybe Foy, where they do a large bustling trade in China clay. I have no idea what that is. One, as a go fast technique, make sure to lower the keel. gosh, I was like, in 8 knots of wind, and we're starting to heel a lot. I'm like, what's up with that? Really powerful boat, huge main. I said, no keel. The second thing that I've learned is tacking the Genoa through the staysail slot is a real pain. And it's better to probably furl it a bunch and then send it through, or full it 100%. It's not with that fixed staysail, it's difficult. And the third thing I've learned today is I have 2 sheets, the staysail sheet and the Genoa sheet, going through a ring that the in-hauler uses. So they go through there. When you apply the in-hauler, the sheets come in more inboard. The problem is the splice on the Genoa sheet gets fairly thick, and with the other staysail sheet in there, it's now getting stuck. So I'm trying to get the boat to go upwind. So our next waypoint is about 17 nautical miles away. I got a true wind angle of 45, which is not beating, darn close to it. I'm trying to keep a little away from the shore because I think there'll be a shift that will be unfavorable later on. Cooking up now to 8 knots of breeze, and we're making 5 knots. So we're making 5 knots through the water. We're making 5.4. So we have a foul current of about 0.3, 0.4, which is precisely what the models predict. Just finishing up eating lunch. And here's the old VHF radio. I have it now in instruments mode. Not that I look at this one that much, but over here is VHF mode, and I'm monitoring a host of channels which are like ship to ship and some of the marinas, but hard for me to hear since it's downstairs. I have a handheld on deck that's on 16. The batteries are at 86% and losing 11 amps because I have 3 chart plotters on and the radar. This black line is the shortest route to where I'm going. So if I was a motorboat, I'd just get on this line. And you look, there are a lot of other people that are connecting to the 2 points, and they're on that line like it's a superhighway. Why am I drunk driving off to this direction? Well, the reason is the weather forecast predicts that the wind, we're on port tack now, will shift this direction. Sailors call us to the right. And unfortunately, then it will become almost straight down the line, which means I'll have to zigzag tack back and forth. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm getting distance between myself and the line, which is less efficient now, but hopefully later on, if that shift comes, I might still be able to get to Foy without having to do a bunch of tacks. Maybe it's the Mike Tyson line. Everybody's got a plan before you get punched in the face.
The breeze increased slightly as the day went on, making the boat more fun to sail. I can just sit at the helm, just in that tiller, trying to stay in the groove for hours, watching the miles pass under the keel. It's important that I keep an eye on the mainsail and jib trim. The main needs to be powered up in such light air. You might not guess where I'm filming this from. I'm actually inside the salon looking forward through the large window. This is a great feature of the JPK-39. From this angle, it looks like I need to move the jib halyard tensioner up 1 or 2 clicks. And also the draft is looking a bit far forward, so maybe the car needs to be moved as well. This video went a bit long, so I'm going to continue it in part 2, which will be released in a few days.